Good morning everyone, and welcome to this month's webinar in which we're going to look at how to become an age-friendly employer. So before we make a start, we would like to introduce ourselves. I'm Victoria Templeton, HR Knowledge Manager here at HR Solutions, and I'm joined by Sue Watson, Head of Client Services, and Rebecca Johnson, our Marketing Manager. And because we've got so many of you who have joined us today, which is great, we've placed you all on mute, but as always, we do like to have your questions. So when you see this slide, it means we're at the end of the webinar and we'll be taking your live questions. So I'm just going to quickly run through how you can do that. First of all, you'll see on the screen here an image of what your GoToWebinar panel looks like. So simply type in your question in the question pane and we'll aim to read out and answer as many as we can at the end. And when you see this slide, it means we're going to be running a confidential poll in which we're looking to seek your input, which will help in the running of our webinar today and just provide some really interesting insights for everybody on the webinar. And just to flag, when you see this slide and you want to participate in the poll, just make sure you're not in the full screen mode, because for some reason GoToWebinar, the poll system doesn't work in the full screen mode. So in this webinar, this is what we're going to run through. So first of all, we're going to look at what we mean by becoming an age-friendly employer. We're going to discuss the misconceptions that exist about age and consequently then the impact of age prejudices and biases. We're going to look at the importance of language before we then consider the valuable benefits of becoming an age-friendly employer. And then, most importantly, we're going to talk through and share our thoughts on how your workplace can go about creating an age-inclusive workplace. And as usual, we'll finish off with your questions and answers. And so first of all, we're going to just think about what we mean by becoming an age-friendly employer. Well, it's all about creating a workplace that's open, inclusive, and supportive of people of all ages. Now, ageism in the workplace is a significant issue, and we'll come on to explain why in a while. And it can be a serious barrier to younger and older people having an equal opportunity within the workplace. Now, before we get going, I'm going to just run a couple of quick polls at this point. The first one being, do you believe that age discrimination is a problem in the workplace? And the second one is about, have you ever experienced age discrimination in the workplace? So if we just launch the first poll.
Yep, that's that.
Thank you. And let us know.
A few more coming through.
Okay.
Okay, I'll close that poll and share those results.
Okay, let's have a look at them. Wow, 82% of you believe that age discrimination is a problem in the workplace. And yeah, I mean, it's not nice to say, but it doesn't really feel a surprise.
No, I think there are many challenges, both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Okay,
but yeah, it's quite staggering. Yeah, and then the second poll, these are confidential polls, so it's just about whether you've ever experienced age discrimination at work.
Okay, I will close that and share those results.
Yeah. Okay, so what we've got, so 39% of you have
experienced it, which is quite high.
And we've got a few statistics shortly around that. So, but yeah, that is high. Not nice at all.
Okay.
So let's move on with the webinar then, and really here's some interesting information about age. First of all, you know, the UK, we have an ageing population, and the reports are that by 2050 1 in 4 people will be over the age of 65, and that's an increase of 40%. You know, we're living longer, people are working longer. There's 1 in 3 people that experience prejudice and discrimination, and as that poll shows, 39% of you feel that as well, that you've personally experienced age discrimination, whether it's the younger or the older end of the spectrum. More people of all ages say that they experience ageism than any other form of discrimination. And if you think about, we've got race, sex, maternity, pregnancy, age is the one that most people of all ages say they experience the most. And when you look at tribunal claims, so looking at the period March 2020 to 21, 15,336 claims involved age, and as a percentage of all the claims in that year, it amounted to 13%, which actually, when you look at all the other statistics, it's actually one of the highest ones. There's so many different forms of claims, but age resulted in 13% of all claims in that year being age related. So we know age discrimination goes on, both from the stats, but also what people are telling us here in the polls. So we're going to look at some misconceptions about age. And so if we think about it from a young person's perspective, assumptions are often made that perhaps they lack knowledge, they may be incompetent because of obviously limited years in employment and just out of education. Perhaps there's assumptions about they're not so conscientious about the approach to work, inexperienced, unreliable, even lazy. I mean, these are just generalizations that often get associated to younger people, and there's all those stereotypes. And equally, people who are older are often stereotyped, and there were many assumptions made. Perhaps it's about there's an inability to learn new skills. They're most likely to have caring responsibility, which means in people's minds it would equate to time off work, disruption to work. Assumptions around the speed in which they carry out their work, perhaps not as quick, being incompetent. If there's new technologies, for example, there's a lot of assumption there, and this leads on to an assumption that they're IT illiterate. And of course, there's assumptions made about their health because you know, people assume that they're more likely to have age-related ill health issues. And if we think about career progression, etc., then there's assumptions around, well, you know, there's a disinterest in a career or a progression because they've been there, that, you know, throughout the years, or there may be a disinterest in the future of the business. You know, and these are all generalizations and misconceptions about older workers. And if we think about succession planning as well, perhaps people assume that it can impact on succession planning because if opportunities aren't coming up for other people in the roles. So there's a lot of misinformation out there, and hence why I think we see a lot of statistics that tell us age discrimination occurs. And as I said, people here also feel that they've personally been treated because of their age. So the impact of those misconceptions and the impact of the age prejudice and biases, you know, as we've said earlier a moment ago, ageism in the workplace is a significant issue. It can be that serious barrier to younger and older people having an equal opportunity in the workplace. But for example, it can lead to people having limited career progressions. It can lead to higher rates of involuntary job losses. It can create a reduced opportunity for training and development. It can undermine someone's abilities, experience and potential for growth. Opportunities for advancement and recognitions can be hindered. There's lots of stereotypes and biases, and ultimately there's discrimination and unfair treatment. And so a really important tool that can help to prevent age prejudices and biases is about having the right policies and procedures in place in your organisation. And I think that leads us nicely next on to a couple more polls here. And the first one is about has your organisation reviewed its existing policies, first of all, to ensure they don't inadvertently discriminate or disadvantage young or older workers?
Okay, I'll close
Yeah.
that poll and share those results.
Fairly close. So 48% is yes. So, you know, that's great to hear that you've looked at your existing policies, and 52% no. And I suppose, I guess, and obviously time is a big challenge, isn't it, for everybody? All I'd say is, you know, think about, you might not realise that perhaps a particular policy or procedure excludes a certain group of your workforce. So it is always worth reviewing your policies and having a look through them just to make sure that they are generally inclusive of employees. Yeah. Okay, and then we've got a second poll, and that's actually, do you have a specific policy on being an age-friendly employer?
Okay, I'll
Yep.
close and share those results.
No, okay, so no, 83%, 17%. I think it's one of those things that, you know, you don't want to necessarily be having policies for just everything, but having a policy specifically addressing or focused about being inclusive of all ages, it sends a very strong message, not just to employees, but also to potential candidates. And I think having a policy is a big statement to make as an organisation, and it's recognising, you know, how throughout the whole employee life cycle, your organisation is very aware that working practices need to be supportive and inclusive of everyone. I know on our knowledge base, so anybody that's got access to a knowledge base, we've got our template there, template policy that you can download. But yeah, it's actually an important tool and helps support your case for becoming an age-friendly employer.
Absolutely. I'll hand that back
Okay.
over to you.
Thank you. And so we're going to look at language and the importance of it, and it's a key consideration when you're wanting to create an open, inclusive culture. And I guess language plays a pivotal role in shaping the experience of ageism for younger and older workers. You know, words used can perpetuate age-related stereotypes and biases. So it's really important to be mindful about how language can shape a person's experience at work, and using more respectful and inclusive language is really so important, because doing so ensures that everyone contributes to a workplace that values equality, diversity and inclusion. So we're going to just have a look at a few examples of what I mean by how the wrong choice of words can cause offence or, you know, not be inclusive of people of all ages. So, you know, first of all, you get phrases like, you're too old for this, or they're just starting out, they won't contribute much, or they're approaching retirement, so there's no point investing in their development. Or even, how would you feel about managing older, younger people if you were asked that in an interview, for example? You know, these are all phrases that are using language that actually immediately gets you back up and is clearly offensive for people young and old. So it's about thinking about your choice of words and alternatives. So for example, instead of they're approaching retirement, there's no point investing in their development, You could use the phrase, we value continuous growth and development for all employees, regardless of career stage. Or don't use the phrase, you're too old for this. Instead, say your experience is invaluable. Another suggestion is if you're in an interview, so what skills do you have to enable you to effectively manage a team? You don't need to highlight the fact that they could be managing a team that has workers in it from either that are maybe either older or younger. And finally, you could say they have a fresh perspective to offer instead of saying they're just starting out, they won't contribute much. So it's really a good illustration about how using the right words and phrasing can really make a difference to how somebody will feel. Here's some other examples of perhaps things you wouldn't want to say and an alternative way of saying it. So old employee, you would want to use the phrase older employee. Middle-aged workforce could be experienced workforce. Young at heart, driven, energetic, kids, youngster, young person, teenager. So it's just thinking about the choice of words, and perhaps as part of, if you're looking to develop a policy that's age inclusive, you could bring this into your policy, so when you communicate it out, you're also communicating to your workforce about the importance of using the right language. So I think we're going to look at why it's so important to become an age-friendly employer, and I think there's some obvious things. I think the main obvious thing is it's the right thing to do. We want to treat people just as we would like to be treated, and it is just morally the right thing to do. But from a business perspective, what you'll see is you're going to be improving candidate attraction and employee retention. You're going to be embracing a wider recruitment pool, so you're going to be able to get a more diverse selection of candidates in. You're going to improve innovation because people that have got years and years of experience can bring ideas. People that have got different experiences in different organisations throughout their career can bring in different insights. And then clearly then it reduces costs because you're not having to recruit, because you're being able to retain your staff. And from a company reputation, it's clearly enhances that. You're going to attract people that want to work for you. If you're seen in the local community as being an organisation that embraces age, and if you think, I guess the most well-known is B&Q. Back, oh gosh, 10, 20 years ago, it was a massive thing that they took pride in letting people know that they recruited older workers, and they could bring their experiences of having done DIY and all of that into their role as customer service store members of the staff in the store. So it really can enhance companies' reputation, the fact that you're saying we embrace everybody from all age ranges. And ultimately it can mitigate against claims of discrimination. So I've mentioned a moment ago there was around 15,000 age-related claims in the period 2020 to 21, and so you want to prevent yourself and your organisation from being faced with tribunal claims, because as with any discrimination claim, the awards are uncapped, so it can be obviously very costly. So we're going to look now at how we actually create an age-inclusive workplace, and we're going to start by looking at the employee life cycle. So I'm going to highlight how you can create a workplace culture that's open, inclusive. We're going to focus on recruitment and attraction first of all, and you may have some of these ideas in place already, which is great, and this just can act as a reminder that you're doing well to encourage that age diverse work group. Some of you may have further to go, and so hopefully this section will bring some ideas that you can take away to your workplace. So we're going to look at the recruitment and attraction first of all. So for example, it's probably things that aren't necessarily obvious, but it's things like, don't ask for age, date of birth, or even dates of education and training on your application form unless there's a specific reason why you have to. Because why does it matter somebody's age when somebody's going through a recruitment process? It shouldn't matter. Avoid images in your materials, whether it's in your internal documentation or the images you present externally. Avoid using images that show only the young people or include phrases such as graduate. The images that are used can really sort of produce a stereotype, and actually if you want to be age inclusive, images should encompass all ages. Think about the channels when marketing the roles so you reach a broad scope of ages. So rather than just limiting it to one source for trying to recruit for a role, where you're automatically going to limit the pool in which you're able to select from. Use several different ways in which you can advertise, not just on Facebook. Go to professional magazines, your company website, word of mouth. So by varying your ways in which you attract candidates, as I said, you're going to be encouraging people of all diversities, all ages in applying for your roles. When it comes to your job description, a job advert, avoid asking for a specific number of years experience. So instead, describe on those documents the type of experience that you're looking for of that job holder. If you use recruitment agencies, we would suggest letting them know that you prefer to receive applicants that are from a range of ages where possible. Because then it's just giving you that broad group to be able to select from, and gives you more chance of having that diverse workforce. And flexible working. So there's a lot of in the news about flexible working at the moment. We're going to see some changes likely next year, and potential, though it's not confirmed yet, but it will ultimately at some point be a day one right. But how about embracing that now? You don't need legislation to be able to allow flexible working from day one. Your organisation can do that straight away, and actually if that encourages more people to apply for roles within your organisation, it could be encouraging people that perhaps are still at university, and so by being able to offer some form of flexible working, you're allowing them to juggle both commitments. Or equally, if somebody is an older worker and has caring commitments and responsibilities, then that flexible working, you're going to be attracting more people to your workplace. Apprenticeships, I mean, they are massively beneficial to organisations. There's a lot of funding out there for organisations as well to use them, but using apprentices also obviously supports the recruitment of young people. And we know from the pandemic, young workers were disadvantaged significantly. It's been harder for them to get into employment and to make the transition from university into work. Apprenticeships are a good way of giving opportunities to young people, but actually from an employer's perspective, you're able to train and develop that young worker into the work that you need for your organisation. I don't know whether any of you already use volunteers in your business, but that's actually a really good way of encouraging an age diverse organisation. But that is something that you can do. You can have a policy that supports how you operate that and what it means in practice, but allowing people to volunteer. And I think if you think, for example, somebody that is nearing retiring or has just retired, but they want to still keep active in terms of their employment, that provides them opportunities to continue doing something on a few hours a week basis. That suits their lifestyle at that point in their life. And then also partnerships with local schools, colleges, university to provide work experience opportunities. I don't know if they do necessarily work experience now like they did when I was at school, but linking up with your local communities, it gives your organisation a good reputational name in the community, but also it's a way of you recruiting for the future, and it's getting young people skilled and equipped, ready for when they're able and ready to start in work. And so again, it's about bringing young workers into employment. So if we think about during employment now, so whether that's onboarding, employee development, managing people, there are many, many things. So if we think about mentoring and buddy systems, you know, how can you make best use of your experienced employees' knowledge? I mean, there's going to be a wealth of knowledge in your organization. You know, how can you demonstrate how much you value their expertise? And one way is to actually have them become a mentor or a buddy to a younger worker, a new employee into the organization. So it can help newer employees, trainees, to support them going through their professional development, especially those who are just not long out of education. And what you're doing is you're embracing people's experience and knowledge, and giving them, supporting their job satisfaction as well. And then health and fitness for all. So think about what you currently do to encourage all staff to keep fit and healthy. So, and can you enhance it further? Could you review your benefits and review to see what healthy living benefits you could offer? Other benefits that support health and fitness could be, you could offer medical support such as health cash plans, offering an employee assistance program. From a medical perspective, are you able to provide paid time off for screening appointments or engage occupational health support? And then finally, employers, we know, have already a legal obligation to make reasonable adjustments for those with disabilities under the Equality Act, but actually, can you broaden that to include everyone, even if their health issues aren't considered a disability for the purpose of the Equality Act? So just think about how you can support the health and fitness for all, so you're encouraging workers of all ages to remain working for you or to come and join your organisation. The menopause is a massive topic at the moment, and quite rightly, because of I guess the impact of it for people. Many people find they're little prepared for the onset of the menopause. Many are even less equipped to manage the symptoms at work. I think there's a tendency to not, for somebody not to disclose their symptoms to the manager, particularly if they're young, because remember, the menopause, whilst ordinarily it kicks in the 40s, it can occur early, prematurely, which is generally any age before 40, and it can also come about because of medical intervention or treatments. So workplace practices aren't necessarily designed with menopausal employees in mind. So if you think about heavy and painful periods, hot flushes, mood swings, poor concentration. So you also have, on top of that, employees not feeling comfortable to disclose their symptoms to managers. So think about how you can support the menopause at work. We know that people find it really hard to overcome perceived shortcomings due to the menopause. And if we think, for example, some things that you could look to introduce, a menopause policy, you know, that is again another strong commitment that you support all those that are going through the menopause. You could look at the provision of information, so there's a greater awareness amongst managers in particular that the menopause is a real occupational health issue. You could have a provision of a culture where employees feel comfortable about discussing their symptoms and the impact it has on lives. So you could introduce perhaps lunchtime forums for people just to join as and when and if they want, where people can share their own experiences in a safe environment and get that reassurance that actually they're not on their own, other people are also experiencing. You can look at options around flexible working, whether to the hours or the working arrangements, just to help manage symptoms, because it can be really challenging for people. And we know many women are leaving the workforce because of the significant impact of menopausal symptoms. You could look at finding ways in which you could have improved access to support. So there could be some named individuals who are in the organisation, so take a lead in being an advocate for supporting the menopause, and really engage your workforce so that they start participating in that. And then things like the working environment are so important, such as your temperature and ventilation. So just make sure that your options are there for enabling people to work comfortably when they're at work. So going back to this table, the next point really is about social engagements. And from an older person's perspective, social engagement is really important. Younger employees tend to use social media to keep in touch with friends, but older people tend to value face-to-face. So think about your communications in your workplace and the working arrangements so that people don't feel lonely, isolated, or not able to keep up to date and in touch with people because of the way communication isn't inclusive enough. The other thing to consider is that some people come to work for companionship, and young people can also feel isolated as well. So take an active position on ensuring that all staff are actively involved in the business, and see about encouraging workers to sort of be reunited again. Obviously, we've gone through the pandemic where there was a lot of working from home and working in isolation, and it's about how we get back to a working environment that is inclusive and supports everybody regardless of their age. Then you have career breaks. So these are particularly good for those with health and caring responsibilities. So, for example, you may have older workers that are struggling to keep on top with dealing with, elderly parents, for example. There is the phrase, the sandwich generation, which is about looking after elderly parents and children at the same time. And it was something that originally described people in their 30s and 40s, but now applies to men and women in their 50s and 60s, because we tend to have children later in life, coupled with a longer lifespan and expectancy. And we're seeing more and more people living with complex medical conditions like Alzheimer's, dementia. So just think about whether offering career breaks would work in your organisation, and how actually that inclusive that can be for your age diverse workforce. And then retention planning. Retaining employees with vast experience and knowledge is obviously really massively important. There's so many benefits that older employees can bring to your business. So think about the concerns that may arise and how you may address these. So when it comes to retention, so for example, do you offer retirement planning support? Do you offer access to financial planning advice? Just bear in mind that you're not allowed to provide financial advice if you're not qualified. So do you have a network of individuals, organisations that you can direct them to? Do you discuss retirement during appraisal meetings? And how can you liaise or link in with charities such as Age UK and other independent outplacement services that can offer some training courses on retirement? And finally, it is recommended that employees consider their retirement plans years before they actually retire. So this is so that they can do their necessary financial planning, but it can be as early as 10 years before the state pension age. And if we think about then the end of the employment relationship, and in particular retirement, then it is such an important area to ensure you manage correctly and sensitively. Remember, there's no fixed retirement age. People can go on working until they're ready to not carry on working anymore. And employees ultimately choose when they retire. You could think of, as I said a moment ago, pre-retirement training courses, the financial advice with an independent financial advisor, and you could offer employees that are in the lead up to the retirement paid time off to seek financial advice and training. So as I said, retirement planning really needs to start as early as 10 years before the individual gets to the state pension age. And as an organisation, if you're able to allow a variety of options as to how they manage their retirement, that's going to be beneficial. So there's several different ways. There's the retirement wind down, where the employee winds down their retirement by reducing the number of hours or days worked. There's the retirement step down, where the employee steps down into a different role, for example, to reduce the level of responsibility. Somebody may retire and return, so when an employee can retire, claim their pension benefits and return to your employment. There's drawdown when an employee takes part in a partial retirement, which is by taking part of the pension benefits and continues their employment with the company. And then voluntary early retirement, when the employee voluntarily retires before the company's pension scheme normal retirement age. So there's many different ways in which you can support people as they come to retire. So that brings us to some questions, if we've got any through from the webinar. Sue, do we have any?
Not questions per se, a couple of observations which were quite interesting to discuss.
Yeah.
So one is that it's great that companies have policies, but they don't stop discrimination,
No.
because that can be exhibited by anybody, including the leaders of the organisation. I think my initial response to that is absolutely. It's the same with any policy, to be fair, and it's all about the implementation and the training and the way that they are portrayed in the organisation. If you want to be seen as an age-friendly employer, then having a policy is a starting point. But you also need to train all your directors and then cascade that down in equality and diversity to make sure it's understood what's meant by it, what their role is, and the importance of the policy then is in managing it. If it does happen in the organisation, it kind of supports you, I think, is my initial response to that.
Yeah, and then looking at the working practices that support that policy. So like if you take recruitment, and I've spoken about, varying your sources of how you attract, so either don't rely solely on social media, or don't solely rely on your website, because you're potentially putting yourself in a position where you're excluding an age diverse pool of people. So it's looking at the practices as well that supports your policy. So can you do your recruitment in a slightly different way in which you broaden the pool in which you're looking for people? But yeah, definitely it's all about how you live and breathe the policy, isn't it?
Absolutely.
But it's a starting point. Yeah,
and I think it is, because you promote it in your recruitment, you promote it in your day-to-day with the staff, saying, we are an age friendly, and then if managers are aware of that policy and still breach it, then that's a different issue altogether. But at least it shows where the company stance is. And the other one is around apprenticeships. It's just an observation that they can be for any age, although they are predominantly younger people, but they are kind of people transitioning or at any age.
Apologies for that. Somebody might want to have a career change, so it isn't just somebody that's just out of education at all. But yeah, that's a good point.
And somebody also is asking if career breaks are offered as a paid benefit. Interestingly, I am aware of a large employer that does offer career breaks as a paid benefit, and it's after you have so many years service, they're allowed to take, I think it's 2 months paid leave to go and do whatever they want.
Wow.
It's kind of like an additional holiday as an additional benefit, but that is a large corporate organisation. So I think it's costly, and there may be larger organisations who can introduce that, but I think it would be a challenging one for smaller organisations unless it's done on a I think some do it on a small level by giving you spa days or something, days off to go and do what you like, to relax and things like that. So I guess there's ways of doing it on a smaller scale, but yeah, I don't think there's many that offer the paid career breaks that I'm aware of anyway. And then there's another observation is if you have a culture of focusing on graduate trainees being the managers of the future, it could disengage older workers from seeking promotions or even applying, as the graduate managers will be the future leaders. So yeah, it's and that's quite common in larger organisations as well, isn't it? That they encourage recruitment into the graduate sort of schemes based on, you know, you will be our leaders in the future. And yeah, if you're not careful, that's potentially discriminatory about existing staff who might be older, although they could be the graduates of the past that we're working through.
Yeah, I
as
think
well.
it's
So
about knowing your organisation, isn't it? And if you monitor, do equal opportunities monitoring, and you have an understanding of the age diversity of your workforce, you can then target where you need to perhaps put more focus to encourage. So if younger people are underrepresented, you can target how you approach that. Obviously, there's got to be some justification, because otherwise you risk discriminating, don't you? Because you're focusing on a particular group. But you need to know your organisation and the workforce to know what measures you want to put in or need to put in.
Absolutely. But yeah, it's quite, when you start to think about it, you've got to live and breathe it, haven't you, in the whole culture of the organisation, and it will feed into, as you've demonstrated, every policy and every process that you have within the organisation. And there's quite a lot of literature and supporting documentation about it and to help with this. So that, yes, absolutely. We have got another question about, is there a particular policy that addresses how to support staff who have multiple appointments to cover a medical issue such as cancer? I guess that's managing your absence policy.
Yeah, so, you know, in general, all health issues are managed under your absence management policy, isn't it? So, and it's how you make adjustments to your process to take account of somebody's disability or somebody's, you know, very serious medical condition. So it would be more to do with your absence management policies and the support that you can offer.
Absolutely. And it's all right. Somebody was asking about company culture. We have quite a young company culture, but some older workers are vocally against it, like no music in the office. And I guess that's the challenge, isn't it? Of you know, you could use employee engagement forums, or you know, where a whole diverse range of employees from the workforce get together to discuss things like that, the office environment, and come to some agreement. As long as you've got representation of all diverse employees, whatever, then that really, they need to reach some consensus on it so that it's comfortable for everyone. And I think there will be some compromises needed, but it may be that you know, somebody might say no music in the office. Maybe they'll agree to having music just over lunch or something, so they can choose to leave the office at that point. I mean, there are ways of
phones or
absolutely. So I guess it's trying to find ways of keeping the whole workforce happy in their work, and depends on what they do as well, I guess, as to what's possible. But yeah.
Okay. Shall I move the slides on?
I think that's it. Yes. Thank you.
So just to bring the webinar to the end, just as usual, we'd just like to let you know what the training courses we're able to offer. We are accredited to run the ILM level 3 and 5. So do get in touch if you're interested in those leadership and management training courses. And we also run several training courses as well on all areas of people management that count. Some of them count towards CPD points. So just let us know if you've got any needs in your organisation. We also have health and safety. Excuse me a minute. Right. We have health and safety courses we're able to support. Obviously, mental health is always a big need and request, highly sought after that training course. We also do fire safety, food safety, safeguarding. So get in touch if there's any training that we can help support your organisation with. And then we've got the new webinar schedule launching soon. We're hoping this week. First of all, the last one in the current series is taking place next week, which is all about immigration developments and how they may impact employment. So do join us for that. Just to give you an idea of what we're going to be covering in our webinar schedule, we're going to be looking at apprenticeships, contracts of employment and work statuses, 2024 and what's going to come in the year ahead for us from a HR perspective, and long-term sickness. So do look out for the new webinar schedule and get signed up. That'd be great to have you join us on those. We're going to run our final poll, and it's more about how and if you'd like us to follow up with you after today's webinar about any of our services. So do let us know by completing the poll.
You can also message us direct if there's anything else you're interested in as well, and contact us through the usual means. We're more than happy, Victoria and I are both happy to help if you've got any questions as well. So yeah, do let us know. Okay, just a sudden flurry of okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay, and I'll move the slide on. And really, that's just to say thank you for joining us again this month. Great to have you join us. Thank you to Sue and Rebecca for supporting in the running of the webinar. And as I said, hope to see you in our next webinars, and obviously look out for our new webinar schedules. So until next time, have a good weekend. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.